Hey guys, this is Noxdealance. If there's one thing that a lot of people take for granted, it's the ability to live. A lot of people waste their time doing things that aren't important and won't benefit them in the long run instead of doing things that will benefit them and make them more happy. Instead of making new connections, working towards a better career, or starting hobbies that have always interested them, some people choose to let their lives stay the way they are despite not being satisfied with how their lives are going. They justify these actions by making excuses for themselves and deciding to start making changes in their life starting tomorrow. However, the opportunities that they may have been able to get the day before are not guaranteed to still be there the next day. Heck, their own lives aren't even guaranteed to be around by the next day. Life is fickle, and it can be gone in an instant, so it's important not to squander any opportunities that you may be given. That being said, while life can be taken away at a moment's notice, it's important not to dwell on that. While yes, it's important to be conscious of the choices that you make so that you don't shorten your lifespan, you shouldn't let the fear of no longer being alive control you. That's just gonna lead you to feeling miserable about everything and leave you unable to enjoy the good parts of life. I bring all this up because today I want to talk about a game from my childhood that touched on the topics of life and death in a way that made me look at life and death more differently. Growing up, this game was one of my favorite games to play on the Wii. I'm talking about Sonic and the Black Knight. So just some context for those who have never heard of this game, Sonic and the Black Knight is actually the second entry in a short-lived canon spin-off series known as the Storybook series. Games from the Storybook series had Sonic enter the world of certain storybooks and go on adventures to save the world of those storybooks. While the first game, Sonic and the Secret Rings, had Sonic enter the world of the Arabian Nights, Black Knight had Sonic enter the world of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. In these games, Sonic would meet alternate versions of his friends that took on the role of certain storybook characters. While the storybook characters do share some personality traits with their counterparts, they are ultimately different characters, so if they do something that doesn't seem true to their character, then that's why. Returning the focus back to Black Knight specifically, it was one of the few games that really struck a chord with me as a kid because of its theme of life and death and how the writers of the game had implemented it into the story, and because it had some of Sonic's best character writing in the franchise. It's because of those reasons that I want to analyze Black Knight's story and go over how it handles its theme and how it does such a good job with the characterization of Sonic. Just a quick heads up, my copy of Sonic and the Black Knight is broken and won't let me get past the title screen if I'm even lucky enough to reach the title screen to begin with. That's why I'm going to be pulling all the clips I need from YouTube and linking my sources in the video's description. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. The story begins when a pink-haired mage named Merlina is confronted by a knight in dark gold armor. With nowhere to escape, Merlina uses her magic in order to summon our titular hero from his world to hers, falling from the sky and face-planting onto the ground. After recovering from the fall, Sonic quickly analyzes the situation before deciding to take action, defeating the knight's minions without breaking a sweat. Before he could face the knight head-on, Merlina grabs Sonic and uses her magic in order to escape. Having escaped to a misty forest, Merlina explains that the knight she was fleeing from was actually King Arthur, and that the reason she stopped Sonic from attacking him was because King Arthur contains an item known as Excalibur's Scabbard, which grants him immortality. It was due to the scabbard that King Arthur had changed from a just ruler to a corrupt and maniacal king, and now he plans to use the power of the underworld to plunge his kingdom into darkness. Merlina tasks Sonic with defeating King Arthur and guides him in the direction of a sacred sword that should help him on his quest. Not needing to hear anything else, Sonic dashes forward ready to help defeat the king, though not before Merlina gifts him with a steel gauntlet. Why she does that, I have no idea. It might be for protection or a gift to signify Sonic's path toward knighthood, but there's never any actual reason given. Anyway, when Sonic finds the sword, he goes up to it and sees that it's stuck inside a stone. As he gets ready to pull it out, Merlina warns Sonic that if he pulls the sword from the stone and kills King Arthur with it, he'd be branded as a villain for the rest of his life. Sonic, however, brushes it off with a smile, unbothered by the fact that he wouldn't be viewed as the hero. I want you all to remember this specific interaction because I'll be bringing this up again later in the video. Once Sonic pulls the sword from the stone, Merlina reveals the sword's name as Caliburn before the sword springs to life after hearing Sonic insulting it. Viewing Sonic as a miscreant, Caliburn vows to whip him into shape, though before their training can begin, King Arthur appears, putting Sonic's current sword skills to the test. Although Sonic and Caliburn were able to injure King Arthur, the power of Excalibur's Scabbard was able to heal him, allowing King Arthur to flee. Caliburn advises Sonic to visit the Scabbard's former owner known as Nemu, the Lady of the Lake, due to him believing that Nemu knows how to hinder its power. On their way, Caliburn notices that his edges had become blunt due to being stuck in the stone, so he suggests making a quick detour to the castle town so that they can find a blacksmith. Before they could leave, Sonic notices something wrong with Merlina, as she picks a flower up and quietly questions why something so beautiful blooms just to one day die. Moving past her own question, Merlina tells Sonic that she can't follow him into town due to her not wanting to be recognized, leaving Sonic and Caliburn to continue on without her for now. After sharpening Caliburn at the town's local blacksmith and encountering and defeating one of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, Lancelot, Sonic and Caliburn finally meet Nemu. Hesitant to reveal the scabbard's weakness in fear of Sonic getting corrupted by its power, Nemu decides to issue 3 tests in order to prove his worthiness. The first being to free the innocent people King Arthur locked away in his dungeon, the second being to offer help to those who are in need of it, and the final test being to defeat King Arthur's forces from the underworld. Nemu only gives them 3 days, so Sonic and Caliburn quickly go off to complete her tests. While in the middle of completing Nemu's tests, Sonic comes across a crying child in the middle of the forest. After asking her what's wrong, the child reveals that a dragon had attacked her village and kidnapped all its inhabitants. Without giving it much thought, Sonic decides to go after the dragon. Caliburn warns Sonic that he won't pass Nemu's test in time if they go off to slay the dragon, but Sonic is adamant about doing it, stating that he only plays by his own rules. Now I want to stop right here before I continue on with the story. This scene, along with the scene from earlier when Sonic said he didn't mind being seen as a villain, perfectly encapsulates him as a character. The best way that I could describe Sonic is that he's a hero who's not really trying to be a hero. Sure, Sonic always stops his nemesis Dr. Eggman from taking over the world, but he doesn't do it because it's the right thing to do or because he feels justice needs to be served. He does it because he has his own moral compass and he will always stand by what he thinks is right without hesitation, no matter what. For example, when Merlina warns him that killing King Arthur will lead him to be viewed as a villain, he doesn't even think twice about it and pulls Caliburn from the stone. Sure, he may be branded as a villain and a killer by everyone, but as long as he believes that he's doing the right thing, Sonic doesn't really care what other people have to say. Another example is when Sonic comes across another one of the Knights of the Round Table, Sir Gawain. During their encounter, Sonic beats Gawain in a fight, and out of a feeling of dishonor, Gawain takes one of his blades and plans to kill himself. Instead of trying to talk him out of it or show him compassion like a typical hero would do, Sonic snatches the blade from Gawain in annoyance and offers him his own perspective before continuing Nemu's test, that being a knight should be about more than serving the king. One final example is the scene with the little girl whose village was attacked by a dragon. If Sonic doesn't pass Nemu's test, he'll never be able to beat King Arthur and the world will be doomed. He only has 3 days to pass them, and he might not make it in time if he helps the villagers, yet in spite of that, Sonic still offers to help anyways, because he feels like it's the right thing for him to do at that moment, even if it means he's putting the world at risk. That's just who Sonic is as a character. Even though he may offer his perspective on things, he's not someone who tries to be the moral authority. He's just trying to fight for what he believes is the right thing to do, even if others disagree. And as the video continues on, you'll see another great example of this. But for now, let's continue on with the story. After beating the dragon, Sonic and Caliburn return to the girl and tell her they were able to save the villagers. The girl then reveals herself to be Nemu in disguise and reveals that this had been part of her test and that Sonic had passed. Once they return to the lake, Nemu reveals that in order to beat King Arthur, Sonic must collect the swords of the Knights of the Round Table and use their power along with Caliburn to dispel his immortality. Having already beaten and collected the swords of 2 of the knights, Sonic must beat the final knight Percival and collect her sword. After coming across Percival, defeating her in battle, and saving her from certain death, Caliburn officially knights Sonic, granting him the title of Sir Sonic, Knight of the Wind. Before going off to fight King Arthur, Sonic once again comes across Merlina, who reveals that she has been watching him all this time. After expressing her gratitude to the Blue Hedgehog, Merlina reveals the location of where King Arthur is hiding, an island named Avalon. She then tells Sonic to meet her in Castle Camelot once he defeats King Arthur. When he finally comes across the corrupt king for the 3rd time, Sonic introduces himself as the Knight of the Wind and vows to settle things then and there. After bringing the king to his knees, Sonic uses the power of the 3 swords to dispel the scabbard's power before striking him down with Caliburn. The king's body quickly fades away, leaving Excalibur's scabbard in its place. Taking the scabbard, Sonic meets up with Merlina and tells her what happened to King Arthur's body. Merlina then reveals that King Arthur had never existed and that he was just an illusion her grandfather Merlin had conjured. Taking the scabbard for herself, Merlina uses it in order to fulfill her own desire, to make every person and living thing in the world immortal. After escaping Camelot, Sonic and the Knights of the Round Table decide to work together with Nemu to save the world. Nemu explains to the knights that if they use the power of their swords, they can form a barrier around the castle. Once they form the barrier, Sonic takes it upon himself to go after Merlina and try to stop her. When they come face to face with one another, Sonic asks Merlina why she was doing all of this. She then reveals that she has foreseen the future and knows that the kingdom will be doomed. In fear of her kingdom coming to an end, Merlina plans to use the power of the scabbard to make an everlasting kingdom. Believing that there is no value to a never-ending world, Sonic tries to stop Merlina, trying over and over to strike her down, but to no avail. Acting of his own free will, Caliburn defends an injured Sonic, leading to the Sacred Sword's demise. Out of anger for his friend, Sonic tries to attack Merlina, only to be struck down over and over again. Viewing the fight thanks to Nemu's magic, the Knights of the Round Table plead to Sonic to run away, but Sonic refuses. Now this next clip, I'm gonna let it play out on its own because I don't feel like I could do justice to how impactful it can be and how well it portrays Sonic's character.
No, Sonic! There is no point in continuing! A knight never flees his foe, right? Ah! You fool! This no longer has anything to do with chivalry! Get out of there! Run! It was never about chivalry for me. I just gotta do what I've gotta do. That's all.
Thanks to Sonic's resolve and the power of the swords of the Knights of the Round Table, Caliburn is repaired and both him and Sonic gain the power of Excalibur, which transforms them into Excalibur Sonic. With their newfound power, Excalibur Sonic is able to beat Merlina and subdue the power of the scabbard once again. With Camelot back to normal, a de-transformed Sonic approaches Merlina to give her his perspective on life and death. Once again, I can't do this scene justice by describing it, so I'm just gonna let it speak for itself.
Merlina, every world has its end. I know that's kind of sad, but that's why we gotta live life to the fullest in the time we have. At least, that's what I figure.
Grandfather.
After that, Caliburn dubs Sonic the true king of Camelot, and the story ends with Sonic recapping his adventure to his friend Amy. Now before I give my opinion on how well the game approaches its theme of life, I want to go over the last moments of the game and how well they portray Sonic's character. Those moments really backed up the point I made earlier about Sonic being a hero who doesn't set out to be a hero. Sonic doesn't try to talk down Merlina or come at things from a moral standpoint even though he believes what she's doing is wrong. Instead, he tries to physically stop her from enacting her plan because just like Merlina, he wants to fight for his ideals. Even when he does end up beating her, he doesn't try to get on his high horse and try to explain why what she did was wrong. Instead, he gives her his views on life and why it's important to live it to the fullest in the small time everyone has. Sonic is a character who lives life by his own principles and terms, free from regret and doubt, always moving forward to his next adventure. He can't be corrupted or influenced by anyone or anything because he has a strong will and a never-ending sense of freedom, and Black Knight captures that perfectly. Now as for its theme of life and death, Black Knight does have its flaws when it comes to the execution, especially towards the beginning of the story, but the ending does a really good job of driving home its theme. Getting my main problem out of the way, while I like that they had that one scene with Merlina talking about how she hates the death of flowers, having a few more instances of her expressing her grief of living things dying would have made her character stronger. Half of the game, you don't even get to see her, and once you do see her again, it's to reveal that she's the final enemy. Now don't get me wrong, I do like the twist of her being the true antagonist, but there need to be more moments of her in the game and more hints to make it a bit more impactful. It also feels like King Arthur was completely underutilized, which makes the first half of the game's story lackluster, especially in regards to its theme. It would have been better if they had King Arthur talk about how much he values the scabbard for giving him never-ending life and how he pities those that are fated to die. Then the game could have had a moment where Sonic gives his thoughts on immortality, whether it be to King Arthur, Caliburn, himself, anyone. Give us something, I mean come on. King Arthur is the main antagonist for the first half of the game, and the theme of the game is about life and death. You're telling me they couldn't have done anything with the Immortal King aside from being what the player fights towards? So now with my criticisms out of the way, let's go over what the game does right in regards to its theme. Although she could have been written a bit better, once she begins to enact her plan, Merlina becomes a far more interesting character. You honestly can't help but feel for her because she's trying to do a good thing by granting people everlasting life, but in spite of her good intentions, she's not in the right. A never-ending world does sound good on paper. After all, you won't have to feel the pain and sorrow that comes when the people you love die. However, and you might not like hearing this, death is essential to appreciating the people you have in your life. Think about it, if they can't die, they're always gonna be there no matter where you go or what you do. People always talk about taking people for granted and not appreciating their loved ones when they're alive, so imagine a world where they can never die. It's sad to think about it like this, but you never truly appreciate the life that you have or the people that you care about until they're gone. So a world where everyone is immortal and no one has to worry about losing a family member, pet, or the flowers they planted is a world where no one truly appreciates what they have. Like Sonic said, a world that goes on forever is boring, and the life that we have right now is short, so we should live it to the fullest. I'll admit, the story is pretty short and it spends half of its time not doing anything to portray its theme better. However, when Black Knight does utilize its theme, it truly does make you think about your own life and how even though life is beautiful, you would never truly appreciate its beauty if not for death. And the game's end credit song Live Life truly brings home my point. The song's lyrics discuss how there are moments where things seem unfair, there are days where you'll do things you regret, and there are moments where you have the chance to do something you couldn't do before. These moments, good and bad, are all parts of life that you can learn from, so don't give up and keep living life until you can say you're satisfied with yours. So even with the story's faults, I will always look back on Sonic and the Black Knight very fondly. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video and you want to show support, like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter and Odyssey. We're over halfway to 10,000 subscribers, so any and all support is greatly appreciated. Have a good night guys, and until next time, lights out.